किसने बोला है that it's easy to lead people? It's not.
What do you think is the future of culture and work in
Yeah.
India?
Indian entrepreneur is highly socially intelligent.
How a senior leader or the HR needs to apply that particular principle practically for their organization?
Here's what I have to say. Which means come here and create some impact. Starts with who we are hiring and how we are hiring. We've kind of made this hiring piece into a by-the-by thing that we do. So we have a busy day and they feel, यार वो candidates पड़े हैं यार उनको interview करना है.
So what's the fundamental change that you think we need to have in the organizations when we hire?
We have 75% of the talent pool, which is millennial and Gen Z. I think 30% of people in most organizations are either wrongly hired or wrongly promoted. लेकिन अगर इनके संस्कार खराब है तो आप क्या कर सकते हो? And I'm saying आपकी upbringing, आपके values क्या है? या एक बड़ों की इज्जत नहीं करना, आंसरिंग बैक करना, अगर खुद की गलती है तो deflect it on somebody else. These are things we are learning at home. Cookie should be a standard, frankly. Yeah, I think more people will have happier marriages if they do this. A quick heads up to startups is that they run the risk of building cults rather than culture.
Today we have someone who has coached Fortune 500 people, build high performance cultures across continents. Her name is Dr. Sujaya Banerjee. She is the CEO of Capstone People Consulting. She has worked with 170 plus organizations and also the founder of Women Leadership Forum of Asia. She's the one who will teach us and tell us that how it means to redefine the leadership in the world of AI. Hi, Dr. Sujaya.
Hi.
And you spent 3 decades, when it comes to helping organizations. So welcome to Network Presence Founders Unfiltered. So my first question is कि क्या turning point था? 30 साल, मैं 30 साल का हूँ. So I think you have spent 3 decades in the professional world.
Imagine,
right?
yeah.
And it's a pleasure for me कि मैं आपको host कर रहा हूँ आज.
Thank you.
So how you started off? What was your turning point? I just wanted to highlight and to understand from your story.
Yeah, so I come from a South Mumbai family that went to school and college, in that arena. Yes, and so I'll pre-add the word protected family of 4 sisters, and everyone highly academically oriented. And as you would already know that, I think in those times when we were being raised, the only way we were supposed to show a sense of responsibility was by being very good students. And, not everyone managed that, but, people like me made the attempt to be able to actually manifest some of that and be head girl of the school and whatnot. So I think that is the start of the journey. And then, of course, wanting to excel academically has always been an important aspiration and so on. So went on to do my MBA. And then got a job right out of campus with Godrej, which offered a car in the first year of employment. So, I mean, what can be more exciting than being 22 years old and you can have a car of your own? You know what I mean? So it was very amazing starting sort of your career at a high of this kind. Now, obviously, needless to say, these jobs don't just come on a platter. Like there is a high level of expectation on what you will deliver. And I think what was amazing in that first job, and unfortunately, I don't see first jobs of this kind anymore, which is that you had to come in with a with a penchant to want to help the organization change and improve. So if you didn't improve the organization in some way, they thought the management trainee program was quite wasted. So when they said, come here and change us, they actually meant that, which means come here and create some impact. Yeah, don't just be counted. You know what I mean? Get us to recognize who you are. Don't just come here because we hired you. So there's no job which is just, I come in every day and I do what I've been asked to do and I get paid. But you come in and prove that you're worth your while, and especially considering in their context, this would have meant that you're bypassing many other people within the organization. You're getting a car which possibly other people have to wait years to be able to get. So are you really worth it is the answer that you needed to kind of sort of demonstrate through your actions. And I think that I got a fabulous starting point there to be able to come in and drive change. And I think a lot of people, their first jobs are very transactional. They don't get a chance to really showcase what they're really all about. And to have people rally around you and support you as a young person who can do strategic work, I think is a fabulous start to any career. Because then when I rest of my careers abroad, and I picked up a job again as part of CEO's office at Shell, And this is to work with him on change again. And so this is 36 group companies. It was ADNOC. And I had the opportunity to work in the CEO's office on change. So it was all of 26 years old, helping them to be able to drive change in a large conglomerate of this kind, which was really amazing. I wasn't
Which year?
This was perhaps 95.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and
the year in which I won.
you were born, all right. Oh my God, yeah. So that's such a reminder, yeah. So anyway, so having said that, I have to say how progressive to be able to get these opportunities. And just before that, when I left Godrej, I actually went off on a scholarship, which took me to Brazil. And this is way back, so I'm saying in the 90s, right? To Brazil, to the US. I work with Volkswagen and General Motors and with Nestle and DuPont. These are all internships. And then came back to the UK to be able to, kind of complete the last leg of my exposure professionally and the rest of that before I came back to India. And then I left the Godrej job at that time. But I'm saying that whole stretch of so many months of exposures in all these international companies, all of that gives you a head start. I mean, you're never the same again.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you have exposure internationally, you've had exposure to drive change, the rest of that. And I must say that wherever I've gone, I've always had people, especially at that stage in my career, very curious on how does a young person conduct themselves so confidently?
Right.
How is this person so knowledgeable when she's so young?
Right.
And I think that's given me a head start. I'm very sorry to see that most people don't experience careers of this kind. And mentoring very early in your life. I mean, it started with the Godrej experience. And I must say, everywhere I have attracted mentors to myself. And I think that's just been amazing. And therefore, they trust you, therefore, they support you. And there's just so many life transitions. There is this whole debate on 6-month maternity leave and the rest of that.
Right.
I've had both my children through my jobs. I've done my PhD after I've had my 2 children. So there is a lot of support you need and flexibility you need in the environment to be able to do this. And yet I've kept up with a career that took me from one senior role to another. So I think that's been the trajectory. And then I kind of kept up with this when I came back to India. I worked with Low Lintas and Partners, which was like a serious deviation because I'd been in the hydrocarbons and oil and gas and infrastructure manufacturing space, and then to come back into advertising. It's like two ends of a spectrum.
Right.
But what a significant learning experience. And I think it kind of helped me complete like the circle, you know what I mean, in many ways. Like you have the yin and the yang, like you have the yin and the yang of how you understand people, culture, change. And I think Lintas helped so dramatically to challenge many of my worldviews. It got me to be able to become, a little more sort of loosen up a bit and not be sort of so it must be and boundaries and this and that. You kind of work with creative people and you unbundle a lot of things, understand them differently, and you truly understand the power of human ingenuity and what it takes to create an environment where people manifest creativity. And how do you do that? How do you appreciate people who are different, who are mavericks, who don't act like the way in which you would see people behave? Also, that when you bring your real self to work, that's the environment that you need, which is human-centric, where people can really be who they are and they can be at their best. I think all of this helps so much to be able to then do the SR job, which was the last stint I did professionally. And that was just amazing because it was my first India experience, even if Godrej was early career. This was a real full-throttled Indian company. Someone described the culture as the wild, wild west. You know what I mean? Which is everyone's doing whatever they feel like. Someone said this is a ghar ghar ki kahani company, which means people act like they're at home. You know what I mean? So they're doing whatever they feel like. Everyone, whoever follows rules, follows. Whoever doesn't, they don't. And this was about the power of the leader, that the brand of leadership that we really want is, are you the teacher? Because if you're not the teacher, then you're not the leader. And this is so powerful because what do you need in a country like India, particularly right now, with the kind of social dividend and the talent dividend you have? You're bringing in people from tier 2, tier 3 to be able to come into the city, and they're all picking up all the big jobs here, right? All of them have high adaptability to basically demonstrate to be able to take up these jobs. Many of them live on their own. These are far more different and difficult situations as compared to what they've experienced in their growing years. We have 75% of the talent pool, which is millennial and Gen Z. What else? And you have a divide between what you're learning in school and what is required in the workplace.
Right.
I mean, the constant
There's a huge
lamenting
gap.
is that there is a gap between, we don't have workplace skills really. So in an environment like this, what else would you need other than leaders being teachers? And I think it's a very powerful thing. We were ahead of our times when we did this. And I think I dare say that the large number of people we integrated into the organization, because we literally went from being $9 billion to $39 billion in the 7 years that, the first 7 years that I spent with the organization. And we did it with so much of wisdom. We just didn't do it. And I have to tell you that lots of people told me, what are you going to do in this in these Indian companies? Because, they have a mentality which is,
Lala companies,
lala,
I think.
yeah,
Lala
they have the orientation towards just making money. They don't care for people. I must say, my experience personally was the contrary of what I'd heard everyone say. And I think that a lot of these organizations are waiting for the wisdom of doing things differently. And if they can see that there's a better way to get there, because they've all come from hard times themselves. Yeah, it's very tempering to become an entrepreneur in India. You cannot not be grounded if you've been through all that it takes to be an entrepreneur.
I think humility and perseverance, if I'm not wrong, these are the two important key words.
Yeah, and grit.
And grit.
Grit. I also think that the Indian entrepreneur is highly socially intelligent. Can get along with anyone, any level, any language. I mean, all the people I was working with were linguists. They were speaking in 5 or 6 Indian languages. I speak in a lot of Indian languages myself, and it's such a game changer. I don't know why people don't learn local languages. It's a game changer for you in all your interactions. You can influence better, you can befriend better, people see you as amcha manus. You know what I mean? You can change all of that for yourself. You don't have to be the outsider who came to Mumbai. You know what I mean? So it's been a lot of all of that which has taken me through the 30 years. And I have to say, I kept getting told all the time that, look, what you know and what you do is too powerful to contain in one organization. You should be a consultant. I mean, you should offer this to many more organizations. And I truly believe there's a space in India for a marquee organizational development consulting firm. Yes, and by marquee I mean that it's really it's top class, it's gold standard, and it does work everywhere in the world. You know what I mean? So there isn't we don't really have like a gold standard brand in OD in our country. And it's part of the sort of side hustle, if you want to call it that, for some of the larger organizations and, some of the larger consulting firms. And of course, there are a couple of consulting firms which are in the human resources space doing a great job, and great respect for them. But I think in the organizational development space, which is really driving change through people that impacts business positively. You know what I mean? And how do you help organizations do that? Which is a multi-pronged approach to change. But it's human-centered. And I think if you look at the trends in our times and also where we're headed, in the AI world, human centricity gets even more accentuated. It's a dance between human beings and machines. And if you don't get the human being right, you're not going to be able to leverage the machine. So I think there's a growing understanding of this. And you will see that some of the most aggressively growing organizations in the world are highly human-centric inside. And to all their stakeholders. So there is great wisdom in combining your kindness, your compassion with your aggression for business. And they're not mutually exclusive at all. They're very integrated. If you treat everyone fairly, you will succeed in your business. And I think that that is a new formula given where we've come from in India. And because we've suffered with scarcity and, affordability is new for everyone, I'm not sure that generosity or magnanimity or even compassion is understood correctly. So compassion is seen as a soft word, you know what I mean? Which is like, I can't be kind to people if they have poor work ethic. Or what do you want me to do with people asking for, unusual flexibilities? Or people refusing to come back to the office when we're telling them that the work from home is not working. Or those who are refusing to be able to deliver things on time, not being able to basically, develop work ethic of the kind that we require to succeed in the market. All of this is very, very solvable. Yeah, we don't have to swim in these problems. Yeah, they're very solvable. And they start with leaders being able to actually demonstrate human centricity. It's not got to do with our employees have got it all wrong. You know what I mean? They haven't. Yeah, the thing is you've got it perhaps wrong because you are used to the lens you were using in the past. So one of the big challenges we're having is that our perspective building has not been so great as we emerge from brick and mortar thinking to thinking that you require in the new times. The new economy requires you to revisit all your old paradigms. And for anyone, and this is true for all organizations, because who's leading these organizations right at the top? These are all people who are normally upwards of at least 40, which means we're talking about senior millennials and later Gen X who are at the top leadership levels. Yeah, these are all people who grew up in times of low connectivity. They've grown up in times where it was a big deal to have a phone. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Low connectivity with the technology not having evolved in the way in which it has right now. So they're all migrants to that technology, and so they don't think technology as solutions straight away. And I think understanding this, which is. And this is what happens when you become human-centric and compassionate. You also become compassionate to yourself. And it often starts there, you know what I mean? Which is, I'm aware that I don't think technology immediately as a solution. Yeah, and it's often because I've not grown in these times. So how does it serve me to be inflexible with younger people around me? Because they could have better ideas. They could actually think of solutions I can't. And that the boss is right and the boss knows everything is a very, very old paradigm. And it didn't serve well even when that paradigm existed. So the point is, I'm talking about my own career, and you're saying 3 decades, where I was allowed to be able to take the lead on being able to drive change so many years ago. Yeah, I've been part of the transformation teams of so many organizations, and I was allowed to do that when I was a much younger professional. They also ran the risk of being able to invest in a female, because they could have given that position to a male. There were far lesser jobs going at that time, rather than give it to someone who's going to go off on maternity breaks and so on and so forth. But they didn't do that. They spotted the talent and backed me. And I'm saying that penchant always existed. Yeah, good talent is never out of time, out of generation, out of, in our times, in those times. Good talent is perennially required. And everyone requires them. And the idea is, do you have the eyes to spot this talent? And are you compassionate enough to understand that people may have certain circumstances because of which, if we just supported them around this bend, if we just gave them a hand around that bend, you can actually have longevity and sort of stickiness of the talent. You know what I mean? And it's for men and women. So I think that orientation towards people, I mean, these are not machines. And I have to say that, when the pandemic happened, in a way, because, our times are very interesting times. And, one lens could be, look at the turmoil we're seeing all around us. Look at the kind of volatility you're seeing around us. Just look at the geopolitical strifes that you're seeing around us. Like, we didn't grow up with war happening around us. Yeah, the alphas and the betas have growing. They've come into a world that is full of war. Yeah, so I'm saying we didn't come from those times. But if you look at what's going on around us, with globalization, increased competition, all of that, everything looks difficult, but actually everything's very interesting. They're happening for a reason, and it's because it's all heading us towards a higher order. To becoming human beings who understand rather than misunderstand, to become people who are highly tolerant and who still have the ability to show compassion. In fact, these are times inviting that compassion. And those organizations who've been able to rise to that occasion are succeeding like no one else. You can't make the trillions you're talking about unless you have compassion in the workplace, unless you have human centricity that recognizes talent and is ready to work around that talent. You know what I mean? And having people who have the wisdom at the top, who know how to do this. Sometimes I've seen organizations do strange things like, let's make 2 people the CEO. Because we think one is not working out, so let's put 2 there. Yeah, this is very amazing and limited wisdom unless you're bringing 2 kinds of capabilities in. And why do you believe that the person who's leading will not be able to? In the current times, no CEO is going to be able to lead the show unless he's working together with all his CXOs and -1s and -2s. I dare say if this whole group is not aligned to the front line, to the last man standing, they're not going to be able to make headway on what they are attempting to do. Yeah. So the point is, the times are egalitarian. The times are, democratic. They will naturally gear you in that direction to win.
Right. So,
So
do
it
you
requires.
think that you were a little privileged when it comes to working directly with the international organizations? Because you mentioned that you have been the head of something like in your
Yeah.
school, right? And then you started off started working with Godrej. So, do you think that you were a little privileged to be working directly with the international organizations? Because a lot of people doesn't get a chance to work with them,
Yeah, yeah.
and maybe that's also one of the reasons that you have cultivated the kind of culture that you have seen there, and then implementing that to the Lala companies in India. Do you think that you've been a little privileged around there?
Okay, so we'll come to whether companies are Lala or whether we see them in a particular way. Yeah, we'll come to that in a bit because it's also got to do with your perspective.
Correct.
I think what we're referring to as Lala companies are hugely ingenuous people.
Right.
Yeah, they're people who often come from very, very humble backgrounds and then they've created what they've created. It's
Right.
amazing,
Right.
the transition that they've managed to make. My conclusion is that a lot of people who are good at seeding are not so good at sowing. So they can create the enterprise. Now it starts becoming really large, and I don't know how to run it anymore. And I think there the orientation towards systems, processes, and all that is good. There's nothing you can just transport from an international company to an Indian company at all. It's very custom to what we need here, right? So, for example, would a find the guru within intervention work in any international company? I think they'll buy into the idea of leader as coach, but the way in which we initiated this and it appealed to people's inner orientation to want to be the expert and guru, and the way in which we gathered all the stories and the way in which we changed the culture rather than command and control, we changed it to, I'm inclusive of the talent around me. I'm responsible for the talent around me. If I have somebody around me who's not performing, that's because I've not invested enough. And in positive psychology, there is this whole concept called heliotropy, which is plants growing in the direction of light.
Oh.
Right? Everyone's learned this in school. When you're in perhaps 6th standard or something, everyone was asked in the holidays to grow a plant and bring it back. So, and you learned how the plant grows in the direction of light, and you also understood that the plant needs to be nurtured. And if you didn't nurture it, you're not going to get much around it. I think human beings are exactly like that. And so, a mentoring intervention actually allows you to be able to give people light. You're giving them attention.
Right.
A lot of organizations hire, large groups of people, and I'm told from young professionals that they don't even remember their name even 8 months and 9 months into the job, and that's very depleting. You know what I mean? It's very disturbing that people don't know your name. I mean, you count for nothing. That you've been around for a while. Also, it makes you question whether you created no impact that people don't know your name, and that's a good question to ask yourself. But the point is, as leaders in the organization, I mean, why would we not make the effort to know who we are leading? So to me, this light, which is plants grow in the direction of light, heliotropy, is a philosophy. It's a leadership philosophy. And I have to say that, bringing that into the workplace so that people understand that you can't just have people who are slaves working for you. Yeah, these are human beings, yeah? And if you're not nurturing them, they don't really you can bring them, they can bring themselves to work every day. Yeah, you'll end up paying them a salary and then grudge the fact that this is presenteeism, which is they just came and brought themselves there, And you remember, when you get presenteeism, you're responsible for that presenteeism because only you were in the space. It's called occupational intimacy. You were in the space to give them light. You were in the space to nurture them. Some people come to us and say, oh, Dr. Banerjee, we have a very poor quality mid-management. Yeah, and this is not uncommon of late, yeah? So our mid-management is weak, The rest of it is pretty good. Like the top leadership is doing great. The front line's really working hard. But what can they do? Because this important linchpin is not doing a great job. And I always ask, where did we get this group from? I mean, are these people you hired from the market or are these people you grew?
Right.
And oftentimes, 8 out of 10 times, these are people they've grown.
Right.
So it's largely the people they've grown.
Right.
So I'm saying they were in your watch. How did they become weak? How did they become people who are withered? How did this happen? How did we let this happen?
Right.
Yeah, one phenomena we have in India, which is very, defeating. I dare say it's also there internationally, which is the tendency to keep promoting people. If people, whoever has stayed, and this is oblivious to the fact that a lot of the good ones may have already left the organization, and the ones who've stayed have stayed. Now, because you want to kind of make them feel encouraged, you keep promoting them, and then before you know it, they've already reached these mid-level people, or maybe leadership -1 kind of positions. And as the environment starts getting more and more tougher, you're blaming them for why it is that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. The thing is, a fundamental question: how have you let them come here? And number two, why have you not nurtured them if they actually came here? So there is no one who cannot be developed. You know what I mean? I refuse to accept that there are people who just don't. Then there's something dramatically wrong with who you're hiring. So I refuse to accept that if you do have people who no one wakes up in the morning to come and fail during the day. So the idea is that's that human-centric element that we're really talking about. So this was just a deviation on your Lala question. I have to say, in their defense, that they picked on the idea to be able to go with the find the guru within intervention. And you can't do that if you're not refined enough to understand that that's what human beings really require. I mean, there are a lot of other organizations where an intervention like this won't even fly. Because they themselves don't believe in it. They believe that each one to their own. You know what I mean? They're happy to be mercenary and grow other mercenary people around. That if you're so smart, then show us your dance. Yeah, if you're not so smart, then you're going to stay behind. The ones who are smart are going to get the cake. You're going to get the crumbs. And I'm saying that I'm trying to say, it's time for us to be able to change that order. And I can see a lot of organizations wanting to do it because the most popular expressions on the social media is toxic manager and toxic work environment. Right. And to me, given the fact that I started 3 decades ago, I am flummoxed, like a lot of my generation people are, on when did we arrive at this? Workplace was the place you found your best mentors. Workplace was the place you found lifelong relationships and friendships. Workplace, you had a skip in your step to get up every morning and go. Workplace was a place you went to even if you were not feeling well. So how did this change for this to become the worst place under the sun and I'm forced to go because I need a living? And I think there's a huge, huge ask there to change that around.
So, what do you think that, any specific Indian companies and then, they are working with for generations and you talked about the mid-management, how the heliotropy, I think that's the right word.
Heliotropy, yes.
Heliotropy. So how a senior leader or the HR needs to apply that particular principle practically for their organization.
Yeah.
What's basic tip that you think that this is how they can apply that principle and they can transition that word, one particular Lala company to a kind of environment which you've seen in the international organizations.
Yeah. So here's what I have to say. It starts with who we are hiring and how we are hiring. Right. We've kind of made this hiring piece into a by-the-by thing that we do. So we have a busy day and they feel, candidates pade hain yaar, unko interview karna hai. You know what I mean? This cannot be relegated as the lowest in your list of things to do kind of item. Right. This is a very important one because you're bringing a human being inside the organization. Right. And this can be the start of a lot of unnecessarily pain, grief, toxicity on both sides if this person's wrong. Right. Now, what is the nature of interviews most people are having? You know what I mean? And I know I'm making some of these revelations here because that's what's really happening. Is that someone is looking at these CVs and then shortlisting these people and bringing them in. Right. And the person who's interviewing wants to know what you've done on your CV and then wants to know whether you've done what your job is. So the closest someone has done something that you need on the job and you don't even have a scientific process of being able to do it. You're just asking, ye sab kaam kiya hai kya pehle? Right. Pretty much like if you're getting in a blue collar day, you just say, ye sab kaam kiya hai tu? Were you in this factory? Did you do this domestic work? Whatever it is that you're looking for, gaadi chalaya kya pehle? You know what I mean? So long as license hai, gaadi chalaya, theek hai, abhi tu kal se aa ja, kal subah se. The point is, this is not how you hire white-collared, educated people. So you're bringing in a human being. And I'm not going down the route of psychometrics because people want to spend, not spend. Some of them work, don't work. I don't know. So I'm an advocate of them, but only a few of them, which I know have really high validity and you can see the results. But what do you do in an interview when you're hiring somebody? You're hiring a human being. You definitely want to know who this person is. And I have only two. For paucity of time, I'll only give 2 hacks, right? One hack is, do you want to know whether this person is used to boundaries? In the sense that have they in the past experienced rules? Yeah, what happened when they broke that rule? Right? And what happened if there was a set of things expected from you, but it didn't quite happen in the way in which, it was supposed to happen? How do you react to that? You know what I mean? Have there been a time when you failed? Now I'm going to the second hack, which is resilience. Not giving people only a leeway to talk about everything they succeeded in, because then you say, oh, tell me about something that you in your CV you're really proud about, or tell me something that you've achieved in your life. I mean, that is a great opening for someone to come and just talk about everything I succeeded in. And I'm saying reverse that question. Ask them what they failed at. Ask them to talk about a time they didn't get included in a team. Tell us about a time when you failed at something, which is you did not qualify to become part of the cricket team, you didn't win at something, you didn't get the promotion, you didn't get invited to a meeting. Tell us about that and how you dealt with it. Because these times are not for the weak-hearted at all. And you are going to sometimes make it and sometimes not make it. And we need you to be mature enough to understand when you won't make it. Right? Everything can't be for everyone. And so if we're not going to give you something, we want you to know the maturity to understand that. And the first one being that if you're used to rules, because if you're coming into work, right? What is a workplace? It's not a club. I mean, I like you, and sometimes you're from the same school and you look like a nice guy. Come on board. I'd perhaps choose like that if I was going to socialize with you.
Right. Correct.
But I'm going to be working with you. And I need you to be able to be an upholder of rules. And that doesn't mean that we're going to be this very dogmatic organization that doesn't have fun. But when we to give you a timeline, we mean it. When we expect you to stretch and do something, we mean it. And we want you to take that seriously. Right? And so do you have people who are used to upholding that? Because when you say he's a good guy, what does that really mean? Largely, you're actually talking about, and this is another area of, a sort of debate. So when you say someone's really good at work, right? We hired somebody who I think he's working out. He's working out because he's doing what we're asking him to do. Right? Step 2 is we don't want over-obedient people. You know what I'm saying? And if you see that as your sole criteria, you're only promoting obedience into the environment, which means this person is going to look for instructions even 10 years into the job. Right. Yeah, so waiting for instructions, waiting for someone to tell me where to go. So to me, I think it's a very good combination. That's why it requires wisdom, to be able to understand that I want someone who upholds rules, but I'm going to lead you in a way where you uphold rules for deliveries, but I want to get to your ingenuity. I want to know how creative you are. I want to know what is your dance, you know what I mean? Bring it to the organization. If we've not gotten that out of you, we've failed on hiring. I also think there's very low repercussion for hiring wrongly. In fact, I find most organizations keep the people who they've hired wrongly, hoping things will change and all of that. Also, I think there is very poor criteria for promotion. And so, by and large, you get it for doing time and so on and so forth. So you allowed, and I think on an average, this is my guesstimate, organizations need to relook. I think 30% of people in most organizations are either wrongly hired or wrongly promoted. And if we got this right, if we really got this right, we could actually change things so much faster.
So I think Zakir Khan बोलते हैं ना कि इंसान पूरा 10/10 चाहिए. काम थोड़ा 6/10 होगा तो चलेगा. In the end, that's how we summarize it. कि इंसान ठीक होगा तो शायद उसको हम 6 out of 10 से 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 पे लेके आ सकते हैं. But इंसान ही यदि 6 out of 10 है, चाहे काम 10 out of 10 है, तो then it's a problem. I think. तो
एक्चुअली इसकी मूट वजह ये है, तो मूट पॉइंट कि आप बिहेवियर्स को इम्प्रूव कर सकते हो. अगर वो 6 out of 10 है, आप उसको कोच करके आप उसको 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 में ला सकते हो. लेकिन अगर इनके संस्कार खराब है तो आप क्या कर सकते हो? संस्कार इम्प्रूव, वैल्यूज. एंड आई एम सेइंग आपकी अपब्रिंगिंग, आपके वैल्यूज क्या है, या बड़ों की इज्जत नहीं करना, आंसरिंग बैक करना, अगर खुद की गलती है तो डिफ्लेक्ट इट ऑन समबडी एल्स. दीज आर थिंग्स वी आर लर्निंग एट होम. You know what I mean? So ye change karna is very difficult. We don't have therapists in the workplace as leaders to be able to sit down. There's no time. It's a space of business. So I think that, the sharpness to say, is this person going to work out here? Yeah. So this is for entry level. You also ask mid-level if someone's not working out. Look, I think if someone's given 10 years of their life to a career, I mean, even if leaders may have changed or whatever, we cannot not know the human behind this person. This is too much time this person has invested in us that we don't have the sort of, lack of a better word, respect to understand this person better. Yeah, we must know this person. We should have supported this person. We should have already groomed the person. And I'm saying, never mind, even though they durustai, do it even when you've figured that it is so. To me, how do you really get to know, how do you support people at a mid-level? I think it's extremely important to get to know the person behind them. And if you're the new leader who's leading people at mid-level and you think that there are inadequacies, is dive deeper to be able to find ways of being. For example, you're both waiting for your car to arrive. Can you strike up a conversation with this person? Can you travel with this person? You know what I mean? And there's so much time to be able to understand. Go get a coffee with the person. Go for a walk. I mean, so many people go for an afternoon walk. Go for a walk with this person. Choose a different person each time to go for a walk with. If you don't know the human behind the person you're leading, you will always be a suboptimal leader. So investing in that, and that's what we mean when we're talking about human-centric leadership. And I also want to add very quickly कि ये किसने बोला है that it's easy to lead people? It's not. Yeah, what I mean, it is more effort. You can't just be responsible only for your own work. तो आप कैसे leader बन गए हो? So the point is you have to invest in people around you. You got to get to know them, and everyone comes from their own backgrounds. There are so many. If we had a longer show, I would tell you about the kind of stories in terms of how many people and their early experiences are in the way of their own potential. And it's the leader's job to remove those impediments for them as much as they can. Yeah, we're not expecting therapy. So I don't want to go in those zones. I'm simply saying, how can I do the confidence building and bringing your best version to work? And how do I understand what is the lever for being able to influence you to move towards high performance?
So what's the fundamental change that you think we need to have in the organizations when we are hiring? Because if you see that कि है ना हम लोग basic CV देखते हैं, screening करते हैं, and then we are moving ahead with the other rounds. Because when we are talking about the humans, their emotions. So do you really think that CV screening is the right way moving forward? Because now we have tools around AI जिसके through हम screening को easy कर रहे हैं, right? So in the end we are not understanding the human. We are not seeing कि actual बंदा कैसा है, उसकी values कैसी हैं. We are just adding one more layer of technology to it. So right, so what's one fundamental change that you think we need to have in our culture of hiring?
So, look, using technology or basically having a very sort of unilateral view towards technology is very damaging.
Right.
So, to me, if it's helping you screen, we look at whether what keywords is this throwing up for this individual.
So, what are the four keywords that you will look for if you want to hire someone?
So it depends on the role. Depends on the role, of course.
So let's take an example. So let's take an example that you're looking out for someone as a business development executive.
Yeah.
Right? So what are the 4 keywords that you will look for when it comes to hiring that person, and you're using the technology for that?
Yeah. So I think of course depends on what the organization considers its own competencies and so on. Yeah. But I won't go there because I really feel we have become pretzels. We have complicated scenarios that are relatively not that complicated. I just meant to say that if the screening is throwing up areas that the person has already done, so some keywords, for example, if you're saying business development, then is it throwing up, for example, ingenuity or innovation? Yeah, ingenuity, which is problem solving orientation. So solutioning a strength this person's talking about in the stories that the person's actually sharing or how they're describing themselves. Am I a problem solver? Of course, we can validate it when we meet them, but is it even throwing that up? I think you will need someone with very good communication, and it has to be both written and spoken communication. Influencing, I would put influencing is a very key word for business development.
In the world of influencers, you're an
Yeah, can you influence? And influence is a technique, you know what I mean? Your ability to be able to influence, you use a push technique, you can use a pull technique, what's your style? And we can figure that out as we talk to the person, but you can't do business development if you don't have an influencing orientation or competence, yeah? So is it throwing up what it is that we need from our job description in the way in which we have described the job? I have a challenge with a lot of these tools because people don't update job descriptions. They are ancient in many organizations. The competency frameworks have not been updated. And, allowing a tool to do things in isolation is a challenge. So I'm saying human and machine. So use the machine to accelerate some part of it, validate it in the way in which you want. And, while you want to know whether people have skills to do a particular job, because you establish whether it's worth it to pay them what you're paying them basis what they've done before and which company they've come from, what they're already earning, all of that. I think we miss some very important cues. For example, asking how the person has been evaluated in the current job. Yeah, what is a big mistake they've already made in that current job, even despite being great performers? Yeah, how did they deal around the mistake? The piece on resilience has so many touch points, really. So you kind of weave the resilience piece out with the person to be able to say whether this person is going to be someone who's mature to do things. Great to ask, what is one leadership mistake that you want to call out? For example, when I didn't lead people in the way in which I should have. Some of them come up with under-communicating, sometimes not having explained something to people. Finding out that 1 or 2 people in the team don't trust them. You know what I mean? All of these are important pieces to bring up. And it also shows the ability to show vulnerability at the hiring stage. To say, and then go on to say, what what did I do to be able to fix this with the two people, who seem to have mentioned that, that they don't quite kind of trust me, or they don't trust the environment or whatever. So how do you act on feedback, and how do you work on it? And does it bother you that people may not trust you? Does it bother you that people may not want to tell you the truth? I'm just saying all of that is a very important part of becoming a leader. And especially when you're hiring, and I'm now presuming we're talking about hiring mid-level, junior to mid-level. There are just so many leadership mistakes in terms of, learning how to lead somebody else. It is a whole science and an art. And so what are they learning when they're actually, doing this? Many people, even after reaching mid to senior level, are very poor at delegation and work allocation.
Right.
So, some of it you can find out at the interview stage. And if you have a very robust interviewing process, you already figured some of the amber flags. I won't call them red, but they're amber, which we should watch out for these things. And you may still decide to hire the person. I would hire someone who would come out to say, what feedback did I get and how I worked on it. Yeah, I think that reeks of huge humility and showing compassion to yourself, which is I can make mistakes, but I'm going to try and improve on that because I don't want to be a leader who people don't trust.
So do you think that, whenever we are talking about CVs or resumes, you have seen that people are, mentioning their achievements and these are the accomplishments and these are the certain key areas where they've worked. Do you really think that we need to also add a, category of mistakes and failures to the CVs?
I'm not sure people be ready to just kind of put that down on a CV. I think it should come in a conversation.
Right.
And because, it is where people are showing vulnerability. I'm not sure people would like to brandish their vulnerability.
Right.
But, also those who don't want to talk about failure, that is a red flag. If you're asking in the interview and they don't want to talk about any failure because it appears like I always won at everything, that's not true at all. So I think being able to pick that up is extremely important. See, I'll tell you what, the whole act of being an employee is about every day you wake up and you come to a workplace, you are coming there with vulnerability and a fair amount of fear.
Right.
And if we connect with that, we can actually get that fear to convert into courage in action. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And a lot of people need that support and help. And across levels. I have to say that this is not even something that I'm referring to in the context of young people. But you come there with your vulnerability. Because you're an employee and there could be mistakes. There could be someone who's unhappy with what you've done. There is rework to be done. There could be feedback that is not very complimentary. So you come there being vulnerable. And I think it's not difficult for people at higher levels within the organization to understand this. Because they themselves have been junior employees before.
Right.
So I think connecting with that is that compassion where I'm asking for in the context of, opportunity to coach, opportunity to mentor, that kind of thing.
So, according to you, what's the future of culture and work? Because when I've seen these new age companies coming up, like new age generation founders and entrepreneurs are building the organizations, there is a huge cultural change, and there's a huge change in the terms of the way they function versus an organization like. It's been like 20 years, 30 years they're running down the line.
Yeah.
So now it also gives a kind of pressure to those kind of organizations from last 30 years, the way they are running.
Yeah.
कि यार ये new age companies का तो culture ही बिल्कुल अलग है. यहाँ पर Gen Zs हैं, they are having matcha in the office or something like that. और हम यहाँ बस एक laptop keyboard लेके बैठे हैं, we are continuously working.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Because now this will be growing.
Yeah.
You will see that the way, even thanks to the government, that the way we are pushing Indian entrepreneurship, new age companies are coming up.
Yeah.
And their culture is completely different. They have their own textbook of having their own culture. So what do you think is the future of culture and work in India?
Yeah. So, look, a culture is the way the organization needs to bring things together and to be able to manifest a rhythm of working that allows them to achieve great results. Right? So, it's a differentiator because you can copy strategy, you can't copy culture. So, the way you got to something is a very important sort of differentiator. And I think it's important for people to start with to recognize that. Now, if you're looking at brick and mortar organizations or manufacturing or whatever you want, and they are also now attracting a lot of young people to the workplace. So they can't just transform into becoming something which they're not naturally, right? So it's got to be, it's organic, it's also authentic, all of that it needs to be. But, do traditional organizations have less fun? I don't know that they have less fun. They have their own kind of fun. But I think that they struggle with agility. And I think that's the big problem that they really have, is that they're used to working in the rhythm of the brick and mortar times. And so there is still an orientation to be able to basically, still ask a lot of questions, perhaps, delegate lesser in terms of decision making and power. Sort of be more sort of directional in what it is that they're asking people to do, more transactional in their relationships with people, all of that. And oftentimes, this is also the outcome of a very large organization, which cannot really be able to, or finds it difficult to be able to maintain personal relationships with people. So it does require that transformation in the current environment, which is, create a connect with people, which is the point I was making earlier. That connect is extremely important. The other C is care. Yeah. So in the current environment, and especially with everything that's going on around, and especially on the back of the pandemic, I think it is a deal breaker to not be a caring organization, and therefore you got to find your ways of being able to demonstrate that care. We also have a larger ethos where, there are all kinds of ground rules we've created for men to show affection, not show affection, to show vulnerability, not show vulnerability, to show care, not show care. You know what I mean? There are a lot of confusions there. And I think, therefore, evolving to be able to become a more caring manager, especially for those who are from the Gen X, who are still leading. So they need to go up that learning curve. And I think a lot of them need more EQ. And that's where we're seeing a lot of momentum to be able to drive EQ-based leadership. Yeah, EQ is almost like another word for leadership, because it's kind of a bunch of behaviors that we're talking about, which can make you that connecting and caring manager. So I think there's a lot of work that organizations recognize in terms of a huge body of the work we do here and globally is around rooting or anchoring our interventions in EQ. So which is, how do I become the human-centric manager? And they do want that, because that's the only way in which you're going to get some form of longevity with talent. Yeah, there is absolutely no organization in no industry that's going to be able to sustain high performance if they don't start changing the style on how they're dealing with people. So it's ranging from being uncaring to being abusive in some places, yeah? And some places it's not this is not the problem. It's actually just too transactional in the way they deal with people, because their leaders used to treat them like that. So it was all formal relationships, if you know what I mean. I also believe that the previous generations, this is because I belong to, the group in some ways. Yeah, I find it difficult to identify sometimes, but I do belong to the group, is that I do believe there's lesser laughter and fun in the old economy ways of running. You know what I mean? And I wish they would bring more laughter and fun. It just breaks down a lot of barriers. And suddenly everybody becomes their human self. And it's too many hours of pretending to be somebody you're not, or too many hours of not laughing. You know what I mean? Or not having laughter, not having fun. So I think that is in bringing that in the rhythm of working, not when we have a party or we're having drinks. Yeah, not needing the drinks to want to kind of unwind, but you can really have fun every day. And I think that's the culture that's attracting a lot of people to the startups, that you can basically do things your way. You can, we're in a place where we see young people in some of the neighboring offices, they like to sit informally outside, not necessarily on their desks. They're happy to take their laptop and go wherever it is that they need to go. They'd like a nice coffee next to them while they're doing this, all of that. So I think more freedom, to be able to do things. I'll arrive at this place you want me to, but give me freedom on the way of being able to do it. I think it's that. Now, here's before you go to the next question, my quick kind of heads up to the startups, is that oftentimes, and because my organization is startup as well, we're like 9 years old, I'm saying a quick heads up to startups is that, they run the risk of building cults rather than culture. All right. And the cult is normally formed by high adoration and alignment, over alignment to who the founder is or the founders are, and emulating and copying their behaviors. You know what I mean? And that's not useful for the founder, by the way. You know what I mean? You need a myriad set of perspectives to be able to move forward, solve problems, all of that. If everyone's thinking alike or behaving alike, then no one's really thinking. So the point is that you don't need that. And I think that is the challenge with startups becoming toxic, which is when you create a cult rather than culture. You actually have the opportunity for culture, agility, human centricity, all of that. But they can become actually groups of people who are very closely aligned. Everyone's trying to kind of get into that cult, and you get evaluated or assessed basis how much you have adopted the cult. and it becomes a reason for survival rather than your real work. So to me, that's part of the reason why people leave startups. Yeah, because they don't like that culture too. And so I'm just giving a heads up to those who might go to the other extreme and say, oh, we all drink matcha here. And I'm going to ask you why. If I came in to do work with you, I'd ask you, why does everyone have matcha here? You know what I mean? And do you think about that? Which is why should they all feel like compelled to have a matcha because you're having a matcha? So we actually are thriving in times of difference. And this is what I mean when I'm saying that these are very interesting times, because they're goading us in the direction of where we should be and what is right. So if you do not have difference, in the sense that you do not bring in diversity of thought, backgrounds, people, you're actually going to be more limited in terms of being able to put out something really meaningful in the market.
So I have an interesting story here. One of the companies, like I was just talking about, that why you are not integrating health for your employees, because that's something which is very important. They're like कि ऋषि, मैं ना दिवाली पे एक लिफाफा यदि देता हूँ या 5,000 रुपया 10,000 रुपये कैश बोनस दे देता हूँ, that creates more impact for my organization rather than me getting all the health tests done for the company, right? But the vice versa. Right, when I'm talking to any founder who are like pretty young, maybe at 25, 30, 35,
Yeah.
they're like, okay, yeah, health is important for my company. I think we should get it done.
Yeah.
But any specific company, that those who are running like from the last 20 years or something, they're like, nahi, मैं कैश बोनस दे दूंगा, मैं कुछ गोल्ड दे दूंगा, गोल्ड का सिक्का दे दूंगा या सिल्वर दे दूंगा, that creates more impact for my organization.
Yeah.
So do you think that needs to be changed, or like do you think that okay, it's fine, like the way they are running, it's completely fine, or it's completely okay?
So, very often a lot of organizations are presuming things, yeah? And they've asked a small group of people around who are saying, nahi, wo unko sikka chahiye, unko ye chahiye. We're not using technology very well within organizations to be able to bring in employee voice. So, for example, the normal refrain when we say that, have we involved people in our strategy? Yeah, does the last person standing know what our strategy is? And before you formulated it, did you bring them in? Because all the strategy formation happens on offsites where there are only leaders, leadership -1 kind of people most. Now, let me tell you this. This is a very shocking insight, but it's true that there is no research to show that only people at the top of the organization can formulate a great strategy.
Correct.
Yeah, they just get it as a privilege for being at a senior level. So whenever I'm asking about, have we involved voices at other levels? Because especially when you're selling a product or a service, the people who are closest to the gemba, the place of work, to the market, actually have information which we may not be able to tap. There's so much lost in translation because there's so many levels and all of that you're struggling with, that you don't actually have access to this data. So the perspective that you're building in the front line among the young people could be very, very divergent to what you're getting at mid and senior level. And so do you really value that? And if you ask that differently, for example, for strategy, what can you do? You can actually use technology to say, here are the 5 lines in my strategy. Yeah. If you had $100, divide the $100 by the 5 lines in the strategy, and then gather that data across the organization and see what people are telling you. It can be an eye opener, because they could come up with things which are very different from what you're thinking at the top. So I think involving people and voice is very important. If you really ask people that if you had a choice between a sikka, health test and something else, and divide the 100 between these 3 and give it to us. Yeah, you'll actually get a better perspective, and it's not so time consuming to do this. So you get a better perspective on what people really want. And I think because the demographic is changing inside organizations, you could well have people who want the blood work, who want to be able to do this, who want to do it for their parents. And so things like that. So I'm just saying it got to be sold inside organizations. And I think there is a huge orientation towards using data to make decisions, for knowing things in advance. So we do preventive rather than, post. And I think all of that is there. We got to be able to tell them to be able to maybe offer them the tech for the choice.
So we were talking about, how AI is replacing jobs. And we know that in the terms of work culture and leadership, AI will play an important role as, technology is coming up in the market. So we also know that empathy is something and which AI can't replace. There is something like, we talked about emotional quotient, jo AI replace nahi kar sakta. So what do you think that what's the future when it comes to the AI in the terms of hiring, in the terms of culture, in the terms of work? So where do you actually find ki AI can actually replace a lot of things, or kahan par replace nahi kar payega?
So I think the future of work research had already predicted all of this. That you will see technology take away a lot of the repetitive kind of jobs and jobs that are have got sort of boundaries, predictable boundaries in terms of outcome and results. So I don't think this is a surprise, frankly. I think people see the quantum of jobs that have kind of eroded or gone away, and I think this is going to be a trend. We're going to see more of that. The good news is that it will get replaced with higher levels contributions that we're expecting from human beings. So it's all for the better, and I think that's how it's going to operate in a circuitous kind of manner. So I think people need to, not panic so much around this. This is basically the future of work unfolding, and we are going to see more of this happening. Now, in the context of, how does this work and impact leadership, culture, and the rest of that, is I'm going to talk about growth mindsets for leaders in the context of understanding that they must evolve with the changing times. You cannot be stuck in old ways of doing things. And integrating AI as a tool is the responsibility of anyone who's leading business at this point in time. So how do you use this meaningfully? It's already there, and we don't have to call it out as a trend. We've got to call it out as an important tool in our times. And how do we kind of become more contemporary and modern as an organization by integrating this and using it, because it's available, and we've got to be able to learn how to use it. Now, this fear that it's going to replace everyone, jobs and all, that's not true at all. Like you yourself articulated, it's not true at all. There are many jobs that require
Empathy.
variation, human emotion, it requires deep expertise, which cannot and should not be replaced with AI. So I'll give you an example, right? So I was leading culture charter exercise for a large conglomerate in South Africa. And they have a subsidiary company which is also a conglomerate. So this is like a really, really large conglomerate, very successful one. And we were looking at how we could use get the top leadership to huddle around to be able to articulate the culture charter for the organization. Actually, the culture charter is a very important intervention at this time, especially in changing times and all of that, and with the kind of volatility you're seeing and challenges of being able to attract and retain talent and the rest of that. It kind of articulates or sets boundaries for what do we really uphold and what is important for us to run the business, and which behaviors will help us succeed. And it starts with the top leadership demonstrating and holding themselves accountable to those behaviors. So it helps you build the desired organization you want, whether it's a human-centric organization, demonstrating empathy, how will you show mutual respect in an organization, how do we curtail meetings with an organization so that we don't have an endless tiring culture of meetings, and so on and so forth. So one is that the culture charter itself gives you a chance to be able to articulate the kind of organization that you want to build, and technology is going to play a very significant part in terms of how we want to do it. But let me come back to the exercise that I was doing. And we figured 6 themes that people needed to work on. And so there were 6 groups, and they were supposed to kind of go off and then figure what they want to put in those 6 themes. And some of them came back, and then they were laughing when they had to make their presentations and, winking at each other, saying we used ChatGPT or we used DeepSeek or something to create what they were creating. And obviously the laughter is because, I found a shortcut. Yeah, I mean, we didn't have to do all the thinking. We just basically found this out, and we figured what that is, and we tried putting it together. So I said, look, give me a show of hands, how many people have used ChatGPT? And they hesitated a bit. I said, there's no problem with it. It's a tool, you should use it.
Okay.
Yeah, but do you understand that ChatGPT doesn't live inside your organization? ChatGPT is not experiencing your organization every day. Yeah, what are your pain points and what are your key challenges? You understand that many times over ChatGPT. ChatGPT can give you some verbiage to say what you want to say, but if it's not articulating what you really want to say in the way you want to say it, then ChatGPT is not useful for you. So how do you adapt ChatGPT or whatever it is that you're using to be able to do and be of use to you in terms of what it is that you're trying to articulate or say? So my humble request for people who have gotten carried away with this is that the AI and all the options of AI, there's wide application of AI. Yeah, it can reduce effort. And it's a tool that can reduce effort significantly, help you save time. You don't have to wait hours and days to be able to do things. So it's actually helping you speed up. And it's speeding up with past thinking. And for every single day, we're adding on our new thinking to the past thinking to be able to make it a more articulate kind of a platform. But I think it's extremely important to value your own ingenuity, your own talent, your own experience, your own perspective, which none of this AI can replace. So I think that the combination of human and machine dancing is actually using AI in a very significant way. So I think that's what I want to say on this. I also want to talk about the kind of leadership you require in these times. I think the kind of ethical thinking and application of AI will come from ethical leaders and those who kind of uphold moral intelligence in a way. And I think that's going to be a very important test at these times, which is where will you mindlessly kind of use it? Where will you unfairly use it? What are you using it for? What are the repercussions of what it is that you're trying to do with it? And, anything that in a protracted manner does not serve human beings is not sustainable. Yeah. So, there is Peter Seligman, who's like a very great authority on positive psychology. And he says that all enterprise is at the service of humans thriving. So if your enterprise did not lead to humans thriving, it's not really a sustainable enterprise. So we've not succeeded as a society if we've not enabled enterprise to do that for us. So human well-being, humans thriving is the outcome of enterprise. And I think if you believe that and you keep that at the center of everything that you're doing, and should you be profitable? Should you be competitive? Should you be excellence-oriented? Of course. Otherwise, why do you exist in the market? Your job in the 21st century, even if it didn't happen before, is how well can you combine this and put your enterprise to human service, which means whoever is associated with this enterprise will thrive. And that should be your outcome of what you're looking for. And I think if you keep that at the center, and it remain high on ethical application of AI, I think you by and large be able to do a good job as a leader. And I think and it starts with growth mindset, which is, do you understand it yourself, or have you just delegated it to other people to make decisions, in which case, it will touch many boundaries and many points where it violates what you're committing in your culture. And I think it's very important to be responsible for that as leaders. And it starts with understanding it and learning AI yourself.
So I think AI or any technological advancement will be a kind of enabler for the kind of basics that we already had in a organization. And I think because in the end, whenever you're writing a prompt, so that also defines how you think. Right. So in the end, you have to put that effort that AI can't do.
That's right.
AI can just help you, navigate well in the terms of whatever you need. But in the end, the way you are thinking, how ethical you are internally will be more important. That's how you can write the better prompts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say that, most AI platforms, the ones I've been exposed to, are highly admirable. And it makes me so proud of human beings and all that we've been able to think of and put together in the past. Many of the responses from AI are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, which means they are quite comprehensive in everything that you can think about on that topic. And if it's speeding that up, that effort up, why not? But whoever is picking this as is, is heading for disaster. But I have to say, it's a very admirable tool, and it's so great to live in times where you have AI.
Nice. So when it comes to AI, now now we are using AI in the terms of leadership, but the other side of it, that we have seen a lot of women also leading a lot of departments and organizations. And of course, AI is one part of it. But the other side that we have seen in the last 10 to 15 years, that now we have a lot of women leaders. Initially, it was more male-centric. And I can totally understand that as you have been working like for 3 decades, it was not an easy journey for you as well as a women leader. So what do you think that certain attributes that a woman need to carry to become a kind of leader? And now as in the market, now we have a lot of women building their own empires, right? So what are certain attributes that you feel and that you think that whosoever is a kind of younger entrepreneur like wants to carry forward to become a solid women entrepreneur?
I think it's a very good question, because I did start off at times where there wasn't even a sexual harassment policy, prevention of sexual harassment policy, you know what I mean? And a lot of us lobbied for a lot of the policies that we see right now because they didn't actually exist. So there were lots of impediments for women. You know what I mean? Even your maternity break was as short as 3 months. Frankly, even the 6 months is not enough to be able to. Your infant is still an infant. You know what I mean? And so the flexibilities that you need even beyond the 6 months is really what, at least till the child is 3 and going to school, is my reading. I'm even saying up to 6 actually. Is that you need flexibility to be able to really truly raise the child fairly in the way in which you're supposed to be raising the child. And so long as you're, and I think outcome driven assignments is what organizations should be creative enough to put together or to support women to be able to sort of remain focused on outcomes rather than presence. And I think we have too much of a need for presence. The good news is that a lot of women have got very significant roles within organizations and opportunities, much better than what we'd seen till a couple of years ago. At some point, this agenda was looking like it's not going to improve anytime soon. And I'm delighted to see, the progress that we've made. And I think like any other agenda, in most organizations where they wanted to make the shift, they've gone after the numbers, saying, let's get more women, so that the strike rate is higher on people who stay and we'll be able to promote some of them. So I think that strategy is good for the initial stages. I know there'll be people who'll refute that, but I'm saying that maybe in some ways we needed to bring them into the workforce and encourage them to be able to come in. And it's paying out well. It's paying rich dividends in many organizations where these people have stayed to take on mid-level jobs and so on and so forth. I have a couple of challenges around this issue, and then I'll come to what challenges do women experience and what do they persist to be experiencing in the workplace, which really needs more work. So I think that this business of being numbers driven, also in being able to establish merit for women in the organization, can be very detrimental. So even if you brought them in because you wanted to bring in more women, and they are 50% of the population and a very significant talent pool that is available. So it's a natural orientation to say which diversity should we bring into the organization. Let's bring in more women. So I understand that, and there's been a move to push to say how many can we get, because in any case you have a leaking pipeline in the early stages because they're either getting married or they're having children. So while I understand that, I think it's very detrimental to use that as a yardstick for promotions. And I think it would take away merit in general within your organization, and it can also hamper equity in the organization for men who are also looking to be able to be acknowledged for their talent. And I found organizations really struggling with this when they have sort of predetermined numbers-based promotions for women. And so I think that is a challenge perhaps organizations are still navigating. But what is the, to your point on, what do women really sort of experience and what are their kind of challenges and so on? And how is that improved or otherwise basis when I was there and so on? I think in general, and this is not an India challenge, it's more accentuated in India, but it's a global challenge, which is captured really well in a Harvard article, which is called Women in the Labyrinth of Leadership. And in that, what they're really talking about is that, when you're dealing with a woman, you're expecting what is called communal behaviors from her. And communal behaviors means you're kind, you're polite, you will listen, you will support, all these behaviors. Being decisive, being directive, being in command, being influencing are all seen as male behaviors, which are called agentic behaviors. And if you see, all the behaviors associated with men with men traditionally, are actually the behaviors you're expecting from a leader. So in short, leadership behaviors is how men behave versus how women behave. You know what I mean? And if you find a woman who is decisive, who's assertive, who can influence and the rest of that, it's always seen like, are you serious? She's quite obnoxious. So you can be not likable because you're showing leadership behaviors. And I think that's been the dilemma for women. And I think that, so, they expect you to be kind and compassionate and supportive and, always basically being, helpful to people and things like that. Right. Interestingly, you don't associate those behaviors with men, whereas you should. And I think what has, the coming of age of all of this has been that we expect now increasingly these high EQ behaviors in men. And I'm glad that there is work being done to drive that transition, which is we want leaders who are human-centric. We want leaders who are who are compassionate, not just passionate, compassionate, and who are basically know how to be kind. They know how to be fair. You know what I mean? We want all that. And I think that transition that we're seeing, where we want a lot of these behaviors in men, to me is a very heartening shift. And having said that, women who've succeeded, they talk about people who are also entrepreneurs and they've set up large enterprises. I think what I see as a very, very welcome shift is that, particularly from the millennials and the Gen Z, we see girls being raised with high self regard. And I must say that the Gen X has done a great job in raising women because they have greater self regard and greater sort of self confidence as compared to women in the past. Most women at that time grew up with knowing. I mean, my MBA program had women, had at least 40% women, and I think not more than 6 or 7 of us took up jobs. It was presumed that if you have an MBA, you're likely to get a better match. So you don't do the MBA because you want a career. You do the MBA because you're smart. You made it to the MBA. You can now find a good husband. You know what I mean? And I think all those shifts are amazing in terms of how these women have been supported by their parents, whether they want a career in music, whether they want a career in being able to manufacture skincare products, all kinds. I mean, we're seeing very, very good, sort of momentum for women entrepreneurs and the rest of that. I had the opportunity to be on a call yesterday because there's like a list of 10 women to watch out for in 2025, and I'm in that list. And I had the honor of being able to meet so many other founders. And I think it's amazing what each one of them are doing, including leading social development projects and also leading medical services to people and so on and so forth as an NGO. So I just thought it was amazing to see such a wide variety of women who are doing so well. And coming from where we hardly saw women in the workplace, I think it's fabulous to see all of this. Coming to women who are in the workplace right now, and because we're on a podcast and there would be so many women who are in the workplace and who want to succeed, I think particularly in the context of the workplace dynamics, where I find it, what I find is challenging is fundamentally women not advocating for themselves. So there is some kind of overarching orientation that I should be discovered, that I'm so talented that that opportunities will walk my way.
Right.
And I think there's a sense of naivety in being able to presume that. It's very, very important to advocate for what it is that you think you can do within the organization, because in some organizations, everything's work in progress.
Right.
So we've not yet arrived there yet. Yeah, we've just opened up to being able to integrate women, bring them in, and so on. But to get them to really have meaningful careers in the organization, sometimes you're going to need for you to showcase what you're good at. And for that, taking the tough assignments is important. And also going and asking to be included in something big is important. And I'm saying this because there was a research we did through the Women Leadership Forum of Asia to be able to figure women who are in leadership positions inside the organization, who are GMs, VPs, and so on, what kind of roles do they actually perform? And it's not uncommon that they've made it to these positions for various reasons, but may not necessarily be contributing to the top lines in the business plan. So they're there, but they're not really where they should be. And to me, that transition is important for the young people coming in, and therefore self-advocacy is extremely important, which is don't count on only the environment being supportive of you and, treating you like a reservation candidate. You got to go there, you're smart, you've gotten on merit, you're doing a good job. Now go ask for the assignments you want. And even if you're not being identified for them, you go ask and make sure that somebody takes notice of what you're capable of being able to contribute. So I think women need to showcase themselves better in workplaces. And I think the ones who are self-employed or are entrepreneurs, I'm so proud of them. I mean, it's so heartening to see this in one lifetime, that from being an underconfident housewife, or perhaps someone who has self-created boundaries for themselves, to be able to see them fly like that and to succeed, and to see so many young people succeed. I mean, I'm very, very proud of them. And I think we're headed in the right direction, but we need to do more.
Right. So I think when it comes to patriarchy, right? So we have seen a certain kind of patriarchy like for so many years. So I think now it's also getting diminished a little. with the kind of environment in which we are living in. Initially it was like कि women means घर का आपको काम करना है, आप बाहर नहीं जा सकते हो, right? And now we feel proud that when women are building their own empires. So one more thing which I really feel that it can be a kind of controversial statement, but I think women are more disciplined than men. This is what I feel, because in our organization as well we have more women working, right? Because I think कि लड़कों को डिसिप्लिन आने में थोड़ा टाइम लगता है, बट women are already a little bit more disciplined. What do you think? That is it true?
So I think that from a protective orientation perspective, they've perhaps experienced more boundaries than men have when they're growing up. And I think that could well be the reason why, they can they feel they want to be validated and they seek validation. You know what I mean? Want to get it right. Want the boss to believe that I can get it right. I think there's a lot of that journey that is going on with women, which is great, which kind of shows them up really well in the workplace. I think that because you talked about the patriarchy, I think the patriarchy in India will only move in the direction of being diluted, because I think there is even in all the artifacts that we see as a culture around, there is a huge emphasis and push for the kind man, the understanding man, the dad who listens, the person who kind of believes in equality when it comes to choices that women make in their lives, significant women make in their lives. The whole piece on asking for permission, I think all of these which are kind of, being endorsed. I'm not sure in the interiors how much that is seeping in. But definitely our dialogue around this has changed. Our conversations around this has changed. I think some of our literature around this has changed. And also our movies have changed some of the dialogues that we have around this. So I think there is an emphasis on being the loving man, the responsible family man, the person who will be protective but not be in your way. You know what I mean? I think that's like those subtleties,
So I think in today's world we call them Pookie. I think if
Okay.
I'm not wrong, I think that's a Gen Z word.
Okay.
But if
Okay, so
have you
what
heard about
does
this
it?
word
No, I
Pookie?
haven't. So what's the full form?
It's called Pookie.
Just Pookie,
Yeah,
okay.
it's
And-
called Pookie. Pookie man. Like, those who are like, who understands women very well. They are like, doing small little things for them.
Yeah.
Understanding, giving her a kind of freedom and independence to, work on their own. So I think that's the word. And I think
is it a derogatory term? The
no,
Pookie thing,
it's a
or
positive.
It's a positive one.
It's
Okay,
a positive
okay.
one.
All right,
It's a
okay.
positive one that I
Okay.
think women are looking out for more Pookies. Like so,
Okay.
we call Vicky Kaushal a Pookie because
Okay.
because he's always appreciating Katrina.
Yeah, yeah.
Whenever he's going for any interviews, he's always appreciating Katrina, that this is how she thinks, this is what I've learned.
Yeah.
Even we call Virat
Yeah.
kind of Pookie because
Yeah.
he's always mentioning that how his life has changed when after Anushka coming
Yeah.
in his life.
Yeah.
So I think so that's what I
Yeah.
think women are looking for.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I find personally both of them very enduring people. Okay, and I do know what you're referring to.
Yeah.
So I think that Vicky Kaushal ended up marrying someone, his senior, who's an accomplished actor, who's been successful for many years before even he made an entry into film industry.
Right.
So I think it's amazing of him to still treat her as a senior and mentor.
Yeah.
And he just ended up marrying someone who's senior and mentor. And I think it's amazing to acknowledge that.
Right.
So I kind of respect his ability to say this openly, whether he's called Pookie or whatever. Yeah. I think Virat, from where he's come and where he's gone, right? His wife's played a significant role and he never hesitates to be able to mention that. And you can see that change in him.
Right.
And I think anyone who acknowledges how their partner made them more centered, made them better people and more attractive, which indeed he has become over a period of time, and including how he communicates and how he come across and all, he's far more endearing and likable.
Yeah.
So I have to say that she's done a great job, and he's so good at being able to acknowledge his mentor and friend. Now, in this case, she's not much older, but she's definitely somebody who's made a difference to his life. So I think this is just being fair to somebody who's made a difference to your life. So I think they're both great to do this publicly, and I'm hoping they're creating a standard. So Pookie should be a standard, frankly. Yeah, I think more people will have happier marriages if they do this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So when it comes to women leading businesses, I've heard that you also have a women leadership forum, right? So can you just talk about a little around it
Yeah.
and how it's redefining or redesigning the leadership across the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, we created this many years ago,
Okay.
and it was largely done to be able to lobby for women and to work with the Women's Commission and so on and so forth, and to awaken people to the idea of equal opportunities. So, I think that's the work it's actually done. And I think at that time no one was talking about this as much, including, like I said, most organizations did not even have a policy around prevention of sexual harassment. So I think we wanted to create a workplace that is welcoming to women, and that this doesn't become the reason why they don't come in or because they don't stay. And because there was no resolution to any sexual harassment complaint at that time, the idea was to not let it become an impediment to allow good women to join your organization or become a reason why women leave and go, because there would invariably be a lot of unfairness around it. It still continues. It's often a he said, she said, and so on and so forth. But there needed to be some boundaries around it. And I think that's the part that we were actually trying to influence, to say at least have rules. You know what I mean? We can't have this without educating people and so on. Our work's always been very unique in that we always position sexual harassment, or prevention of sexual harassment rather, as collaboration between the genders. So our idea of the workplace was that we want all genders to work together, right? And we want mutual respect, and we don't want misunderstandings. So oftentimes, therefore we would, through using theater, showcase where this relationship can go awry. You know what I mean? Where men say something and then women respond back, and it goes to a place of conflict where it doesn't need to go. Or someone feels offended, or somebody does something in a friendly gesture and it gets misunderstood, or someone shares a joke and everyone around who are women are offended, and so on. So the idea was, how do you draw boundaries around this for yourself so that you're able to get along with genders, and that everything does not have to be escalated. It can be de-escalated if we coach each other into being able to work together. So the idea was, we actually wanted to prevent the prevention of sexual harassment, if you know what I mean, yeah? Which is work like friends. Actually, it's so great because we've been to school together or college together. Bring the same kind of camaraderie to work. Like, don't even have complaints against each other. By being able to manage them yourself up to a point where you believe a serious line's been crossed. But we didn't want this to loom large over people's relationships, to constantly start looking for someone who's offended something for you. You know what I mean? So I think it was this, to bring the friendship back between men and women as they work together. That was our intention, not so much this whole business of let's complain about each other. It was quite the de-escalation that we were looking for. So I think we've been kind of a little more progressive in how we want this to pan out inside workplaces. But I must say, at that stage, we've done immense work around equal opportunities, which is really to be able to take away the biases from bringing women to the workplace. Bringing returnee women back. We've done a lot of work in that space, including grooming returnee women, through the Women Leadership Forum of Asia, so that you build confidence, you build capabilities before they come back. So because some people are away for 5 years, 6 years, and they've lost track of many things. So I think it was a lot of being able to actually enable them to even build capabilities to be able to come back. The Women Leadership Forum of Asia has used theatre all along to be able to make the point. And including how to be able to manage your relationship with your spouse, how to be a successful person at home and at work, and to be able to understand that it's doable to manage both. Like, you don't lose ground in either ways because you come to work.
Right.
And also how to build things like assertiveness, for example. Assertiveness is sometimes, especially in how it plays out, can be seen as being aggressive. And no one likes dealing with anyone who's aggressive, least of all a female. You know what I mean? And that can often become the challenge, because you think when you're leading people that you got to confront and be conflict oriented, which is not useful at all.
Right.
Yeah, I must say, when it comes to all of that, I think men are far more tactful than women are. And I think the idea was to be able to convert that into positive assertion, which is to say things in a firm manner but not lose the relationship. And I think a lot of this support for mature behaviors is what women really required. And I think we offered it from a development perspective, build this whole drive on, like, we've done so much of work with top leadership and their boards on including women, opening up the doors to women and the returnee women. That piece as well. During the pandemic, we did some work around domestic violence during the pandemic. So because everyone's trapped inside into homes, it was not uncommon, and you didn't have to be from the lower echelons of the society. You had educated people who were behaving in this fashion. So how do you protect women in the context of physical abuse or mental abuse during when you're locked in, especially in the lockdown period. So I think a lot of sort of mini modules to help people and to acknowledge the challenge that people were experiencing, especially when you had the phase where you had people at home with addictions who basically could not access what they needed. And so then you have challenges of displaced anger and all kinds of other things which were emerging at that time. So I think we've kept sync with what people are actually experiencing at home, and we would have people reaching out to us all the time. Sometimes sexual harassment complaints gone awry, where our outcomes would always be win-win, right? It's not about fighting for women.
Right.
We had an instance once where there was a couple which was dating in the workplace, and they were from different departments, and for whatever reason, the lady decided to call off the engagement, right? And he wanted to know why, but she was not interested in answering the question. Now, both were coming to the same workplace, but she was not communicating with him at all. He actually, to cut the long story short, ended up going to a delayed lunch break because he saw her take a delayed lunch break, and got hold of her as she went into a lift, and then followed her into the lift, and then basically stopped the lift somewhere to be able to confront her so she could answer the question, right? And so he stopped that lift. And, I mean, you actually violate many criminal codes when you do something like that with a female, yeah? And then he managed to go to the floor. When he brought it back, it started again, and he went to the floor where she got off, and she was already hassled and crying. So obviously everyone wanted to know what happened and all that. This could easily have been escalated into something terrible. Instead, he went straight to his manager. He told his manager what he'd done. And the manager said, okay, let's quickly involve human resources and let them know this has happened. But I'm going to tell them I'm handling it. I don't want you all to handle it. And what he did, which was so clever, which is he got her in and her boss in as well. And they explained to her what it feels like when you don't tell someone why you don't want to see them anymore. Right? And so he's done it out of desperation. So if you want, you can make a police complaint, which is ideally if you went to HR, they would tell you maybe you want to complain about this. But can you understand the human emotion behind this? And if he writes a letter of apology to you, will you give us a letter back saying that you forgive him? And it wasn't the men rallying around the men. It was actually the men rallying around his emotional breakdown that has driven him to do something like that. And I think it was the empathy for what he was feeling. They even left the two of them alone for a while so they could talk to each other and sort it out. And I think this kind of wisdom, which I was amazed to see with all the work that we'd done internally, that these two managers came in to be able to resolve this without having anyone intervene. And there was no sexual harassment complaint for this. And there was no police for this. And I'm saying this is what human beings really need. That's why we're talking about empathy. You know what I mean? Like come in and solve human problems by understanding that they are human problems. No one goes out of their way to behave in this fashion unless they're driven to be able to actually do that. And you accept mutual responsibility to be able to resolve this. So I think that's been our body of work, if Nice.
So I think we spoke about, the future of work, culture, your story, how you started off. We talked about how women leadership is important and how you are cultivating that women leadership from your front. So I think now it's come to the point where we ask a few rapid fire questions
Okay.
and which are not related to work and culture, like a little bit of a kind of humor in the podcast.
Okay.
So are you up for it?
Of course, yeah,
So,
anytime.
Okay, so my first question is like desserts or Indian sweets?
Indian sweets. Desserts meaning you mean Western desserts?
Yeah.
Okay, no, Indian sweets, any day.
And which is your favorite one?
There's like a list because I love all of them, but Ras Malai for sure.
Okay.
Maybe Kaju Barfi for
Kaju
sure.
Katli, yeah.
Kaju Katli for sure. Rabri is just outstanding. So I think the list there, but yeah, these three are top.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. So, मेरा भी मीठा खाने का मन हो गया, but yeah, still I got it. But yeah, okay. One more question around your experience. Leadership thoughts for a drunk driver.
Leadership thoughts for a drunk driver. We got a drunk driver once, and the only thoughts we had to do, see, this is like early in the morning going to a remote location, and suddenly we get flagged off, and he's asked to step out and take a breath analyzer, and the cop turns around and tells us he's drunk, right? And we still have like a good 2-hour journey to complete, and it was crazy. So I have to say that stepping out to resolve that, this is like live problem solving. What do you do with someone who's drunk? And I ask him, are you really drunk? And he says, well, I had some last night. And so it's still on his breath, obviously. So then going to the cop and sorting it out, letting them know that we need to go. And I think doing the most precarious thing, which is putting him back in the seat so that we can get to the place we want to go to, because we're in the middle of nowhere and there was no way to replace the driver. But yeah, they can be the only leadership thoughts, which is how pragmatic can you be in the moment when you're experiencing a problem.
How can you drive a better car if you're drunk? I think that's also like a kind of expertise that a driver will be looking for, कि मैं भाई अच्छे से drive कर पाऊंगा, नहीं हम पहुंच पाएंगे, नहीं पहुंच पाएंगे. I think that's also one of the thought that you can give it to him.
I must clarify, he wasn't completely drunk in the sense like in a stupor, but he's obviously had something last night.
He
so
got some like 2-3 shots of vodka.
Must have. Yeah.
Okay, one last question. What's the difference between Lower Parel and South Bombay? So I think you live in Lower Parel.
Yeah.
Do you think that Lower Parel is a little different from South Bombay, or is it a part of Sobo? And do you find any sort of cultural difference?
First of all, I've struggled to know this divide between South Mumbai and the suburbs. The suburbs are obviously have cheaper rentals and therefore are more populated and have I think worse traffic than there. We also have all the coastal roads and all, which have all made things so much easier, I have to say this. Now, Lower Parel, in the time I was growing up, was Dadar and Prabhadevi.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
so
the
it's
name
not
is very different, na?
Yeah,
Like it's like Lower Parel, Mahalakshmi and Prabha Devi.
Yeah.
Right? So,
So it had all of these actually. It's a combination of that. I have to say they've just got, because of the Palladium Mall, they've got like really fabulous buildings coming up around, which all have very high rentals and, the expensive real estate. But people from the suburbs have moved to all these areas. So I have to say that we now do not have any great difference other than more glamorous buildings perhaps. But I mean, all my neighbors come from Borivali and Kandivali and everything else. So I have to say that it is now it's now an equalizer. We don't really have such a big divide. We very significantly have people from the suburbs who've come to South Mumbai, and people are expanding the definition of South Mumbai. So I don't know if that it's going to crawl into Andheri shortly.
And I think even it's the best part about Bombay that it's very inclusive in nature. You don't feel a kind of discrimination here. You feel very inclusive. You feel very protected in Bombay. I've not seen much in other cities in India, but I think that's why we love Bombay. So
No, it is inclusive, and I think it's merit oriented. Is my sense that if you're very smart, you will succeed here. There's no question about it. And my request to everybody who's come into Mumbai, because I'm originally a Mumbaikar and I'm also Maharashtrian, is that you must learn Marathi. It's in your interest. So I'm going to tell all the viewers to learn Marathi. It's not difficult to learn Marathi, but learn it only because it's going to help you. It's a sign of social intelligence to learn a language. So
that's nice. Perfect. So I think thank you so much. It's been a pleasure for us to have you here.
Thank
because
you.
When it comes to the kind of learning that you had like in 3 decades, it's been a pleasure for us that
Thank you.
You have thrown a lot of light upon leadership, how to hire, how empathy and emotional quotient is important when it comes to the leadership side of it. So we look forward to having such great conversations with you outside this podcast.
Yes,
But
of course.
thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming today and getting some time out for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. What a privilege to be here, and thank you for all the questions you asked. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so